There are paths that seem to lead nowhere, roads that start wide and suddenly narrow until they disappear beyond the horizon. The soul tries to understand, to predict, to control, but the harder it tries, the more lost it feels. And it's at that very point that faith begins, when there's no more map, no more certainty, no visible ground beneath your feet. Maybe that's where you are right now. You look around and everything feels silent. No answers, no signs, just an emptiness where plans used to live. But God's silence is never absence. It's disguised direction. It's His way of saying, trust me, even when you don't understand. God knows the road you don't. He sees what you haven't yet seen. While you're trying to make sense of the curve, He's already standing at the end of it, waiting for you to arrive. Because faith is not about knowing the destination. It's about trusting the character of the one who leads. There are moments when God doesn't show you the map because He wants to teach you to walk by presence, not by planning. He wants you to hear the sound of His footsteps, not just the instructions of the journey. He wants love to replace control and trust to become the new ground beneath your feet. And when the heart grows tired of trying to predict, that's when it finally starts to hear. Because God speaks in the breeze, in the pauses, in the space between what you understand and what He's doing. He doesn't need to explain in order to guide. He only needs you to keep walking. What looks like delay may be protection. What looks like a detour may be deliverance. And what sounds like silence may actually be God's voice, whispering, I'm still here. Because God's path is never the shortest. It's the safest. So if today you don't know where to go, just breathe. Take a step, even a small one. It's not about understanding, it's about staying. And if your eyes can't see, let your heart remember, He still knows the way. And maybe, when you look back someday, you'll realize that the path that seemed lost was the one that brought you closest to home. Because God never misses a turn. He simply chooses routes that heal as they lead. And one day, when the dawn finally arrives, you'll understand. It wasn't the end. It was just the curve where the sky began to change its color. There are moments when the ground seems to disappear beneath your feet. Everything that once made sense begins to unravel in silence, and the heart tries to find direction in the fog of doubt. It's hard to believe that God can still lead when nothing seems to move, when prayers echo into the void and time feels frozen. Yet it's exactly there, in the absence of guarantees, that faith is born. Because faith doesn't bloom in security, but in uncertainty. The word says in Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. This verse is not just advice. It's an invitation to surrender control. God doesn't ask for explanations, He asks for trust. He doesn't promise maps, He promises presence. And when the road disappears, it's because He wants you to learn to recognize the sound of His voice, not just the shape of the path. Control is the last idol the soul releases. We want forecasts, guarantees, instant answers, but God works at a different rhythm. He doesn't lead through GPS, He leads through grace. And grace doesn't always show the destination. Sometimes it only holds up the next step. It's in that invisible space between what you planned and what God prepared that the heart learns to rest. Abraham understood this when God told him, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Genesis 12:1. He didn't receive a map, he received a promise, and he walked one step at a time, not knowing the end, but knowing the one who led him. That's how faith manifests. Walking without seeing, but trusting there is direction. The absence of answers does not mean the absence of God. Often it's simply the way He strengthens your trust. When everything feels confusing, He doesn't rush to clarify, because He knows maturity grows through endurance, not explanation. Faith isn't the fruit of logic, it's the fruit of relationship, and that relationship deepens when love replaces fear. So when you feel like you've lost your way, remember, God has not lost you. He's still there, even when everything seems suspended. What you call the end of the road might just be the beginning of a new journey of trust. Maybe He's teaching you to walk by sound, not by sight. Faith is not a leap into the dark. It's a step toward the light you can't yet see. And it's in that first, trembling step that God's presence becomes most real. Because when the road disappears, it's not the end. It's the moment heaven begins to draw a new route. When the road vanishes, the first reaction of the heart is to doubt, is God still with me? The mind looks for logic where only silence exists, and fear tries to fill the space faith left open. But the fact that you can't see what's ahead doesn't mean God stopped working. The invisible is the ground where He works the most, quietly, faithfully, in the rhythm of time that heals and transforms. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 31:8, "The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged." This promise is more than comfort. It's direction. God doesn't walk behind you, He walks ahead. Even when your eyes see only fog, His steps are already preparing the soil where yours will land. Sometimes God's path doesn't reveal itself all at once. He shows enough for today, just enough for the next step to be possible. It's like walking with a lantern through the night. The light doesn't reach the end of the road, but it illuminates the ground beneath your feet. And that's enough, because faith's focus isn't on how much you see, but on who holds the light. Israel learned this in the desert. God didn't give them a map to Canaan. He gave them a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. They only knew which way to go when the presence moved. That's how the spiritual life works. When you learn to depend on His presence, the invisible stops being a threat and becomes a sign. Every pause, every detour, every silence is a reminder that God still leads. The invisible is the stage of providence. God weaves His miracles in the hours when the heart thinks it's standing still. While you pray without answers, He arranges encounters, opens doors, realigns paths. His timing isn't slow, it's perfect. What looks like delay is simply divine synchronization, the exact wait for everything to unfold with purpose. In moments like these, faith must learn to rest in what it cannot feel, because mature faith doesn't rely on emotion, but on the conviction that God's character never changes. He was faithful yesterday, and He will be faithful tomorrow. Even when the path seems lost, His faithfulness remains the road beneath your feet. So don't fear the invisible. It's the space where God moves unseen, but never without purpose. And when you take the next step, even without sight, you'll notice something subtle. The firm ground of His presence, the sound of peace in the midst of uncertainty. That's how the invisible path becomes real, when the soul learns to trust more in the guide than in the visibility of the road. There are days when the soul feels misplaced, as if something has shifted and God has forgotten where you are. In those moments, fear whispers that you've been left behind, that the plan has failed, that maybe heaven moved on without you. But the truth is, God never loses those who trust in Him. Even when you feel distant, He still knows exactly where to find you. Job understood this in the midst of his pain. He said, "But He knows the way that I take. When He has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Job 23:10. Job couldn't see direction, couldn't make sense of what was happening, but he knew God saw everything. What looked like chaos was only the road seen from below. From above, it was still purpose. God is never confused by the labyrinth. He is the map. Every turn that scares you, every silence that unsettles you, is already within His plan. Sometimes what we call losing our way is simply God changing the pace. He doesn't measure the journey by distance, but by trust. And when the heart surrenders, the detour becomes a reunion. Joseph also felt forgotten. He was sold, wronged, and imprisoned, yet God's hand never lost sight of him. In every painful stage, something was being shaped. And when the appointed time came, what once looked like ruin became a throne. That's how it is for all who belong to the Lord. Even when the world pushes you down, God is building something above. The feeling of being lost is sometimes just the heart learning to let go of an old route. God doesn't guide through logic, He guides through love. And love, unlike maps, always knows the way back. It finds you at the corners of doubt, reaches you in the alleys of pain, and leads you again onto the road of hope. In the midst of exhaustion, remember, there is no permanent loss in the hands of a God who redeems everything. Even time that feels wasted is redeemed by Him. Every fall becomes a lesson. Every tear becomes a seed. And before you know it, you realize you're exactly where you were meant to be, because grace kept you on course. The road of faith isn't straight, but it's safe. What matters isn't how many turns it takes, but who walks beside you. And if the path still seems unclear, don't give up. Keep walking, because those who walk with God are never lost. They simply grow. Few things unsettle the soul as much as the silence of God. You pray, you wait, you look for signs, and heaven seems still. The heart begins to wonder if it took a wrong turn, if God is still listening, if the path has stopped. But silence isn't punishment. It's a classroom where faith matures. It's there that God teaches you to hear not the sound of words, but the rhythm of His presence. The psalmist wrote, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46:10. This is the voice of one who has never lost control. God doesn't speak all the time because His presence is enough. When He is silent, it's because He wants the soul to learn how to rest. He doesn't want you just to listen. He wants you to trust. God's silence doesn't mean distance. It's closeness in another frequency. He speaks in gestures, in details, in breaths. Sometimes what feels like emptiness is simply the echo of His faithfulness waiting to be noticed. When the noise of anxiety quiets, you finally hear the melody of grace. Elijah learned this when the strong wind, the earthquake, and the fire passed, and God was in none of them. He came in a gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:11-12. That's how it is for those who walk by faith. They learn to recognize God not in the spectacle, but in the stillness. Because the faith that hears the whisper is the faith that has already left desperation behind. Waiting is sometimes the most spiritual act there is. It's choosing to remain even without understanding. It's looking at heaven's clock and trusting that the hands of eternity are never late. While the world rushes, God matures. He doesn't move by pressure, but by purpose. And when His time arrives, silence turns into song. There's a kind of peace that only silence can teach. It comes when the heart stops demanding explanations and begins to rest in trust. You discover that you don't need to understand. You only need to remain. Then silence ceases to be emptiness and becomes direction, a compass pointing to the voice that has never failed. And if today God seems quiet, maybe He's simply leading you in silence, with the tenderness of one who already knows the destination. Keep walking, keep believing, because silence isn't the end of the conversation. It's the pause where God prepares the next answer. If this reflection is meeting you where you are welcome to stay with us. Subscribe and let these quiet words find you again. Some believe that faith means walking blindly, as if God asked for leaps without ground beneath. But true faith is not walking in darkness. It's walking with a light burning inside your chest. It's the quiet confidence that even when everything feels uncertain, something within you still sees. That light doesn't come from reason or prediction. It comes from His presence. The psalmist wrote, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Psalm 119:105. This light doesn't reveal the whole future, only the next step. God doesn't show everything at once because full revelation would make faith unnecessary. He shows enough for today, and tomorrow he'll show again. In this way, each step becomes an act of trust, and every new day, a new opportunity to depend on him. There's a difference between seeing with your eyes and perceiving with your heart. To see is to observe the visible. To perceive is to recognize the invisible. When the soul learns to see through faith, darkness loses its power to frighten. Because the presence of God doesn't remove the night, it lights a flame within it. Faith then becomes a lighthouse, not outside but within. Think of Peter walking on water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he stood firm, even in the midst of the storm. Matthew 14:29-31. The strength wasn't in the water, but in the gaze. It's the same for us. When we keep our eyes on Christ, the impossible becomes walkable. Fear only gains power when we forget who stands before us. God never promised clarity. He promised company. He never said, "You will understand everything," but he did say, "I will be with you." And that presence makes the darkness a livable place. When the heart trusts this truth, the unknown stops being a threat and becomes the setting for a miracle. The light he kindles within you is stronger than any shadow around you. So walking by faith doesn't mean denying the dark. It means choosing not to be ruled by it. It's moving forward with a heart warmed by the certainty that Jesus walks ahead, even when the sun hasn't yet risen. Because those who walk with him never truly walk in the dark. They walk in the light that comes from God himself. And if today's step feels fragile, remember this: faith doesn't ask for strength, it asks for surrender. Let his light guide the rhythm of your heart, one step at a time, one trust at a time, until the dawn surrounds you, and you realize the light you were searching for had been inside you all along. There are moments when life seems to take too many turns. You pray for a straight path, and God leads you through roads that look like the opposite of what you asked for. The heart grows weary of waiting, and the mind tries to understand why the promises take so long. But what seems like delay is often deliverance. God's detours are never mistakes. They are turns that save. The psalmist declared, "As for God, his way is perfect, the Lord's word is flawless, he shields all who take refuge in him." Psalm 18:30. If God's way is perfect, then even what feels like delay is part of the plan. He sees what you cannot, and sometimes to protect you, he must slow you down. What looks like an obstacle may be a wall of grace, guarding you from something you're not yet ready to face. The people of Israel lived this truth when they left Egypt. God could have taken them on a shorter route, but he led them through the wilderness because he knew that if they faced war too soon, they would turn back. Exodus 13:17-18. The long route wasn't punishment, it was protection. Every turn, every wait, every pause was part of a divine strategy for maturity. God works along the curve of time with eternal precision. He never rushes because his schedule is not bound by human clocks. While you think you're standing still, he's aligning people, opening paths, transforming hearts. The delay that hurts today may be the timing that saves tomorrow. In God, waiting is never loss. It's protection that matures the promise. Perhaps what you call a detour is the true path. God doesn't measure progress by speed, but by obedience. Sometimes he closes doors not to punish you, but to keep you from walking into something that would harm you. The longer way is painful, but it's the safer road. And when the heart finally understands that, the detour turns into peace. Joseph spent years walking paths that seemed opposite to the promise. But in the end, every turn led him exactly where God intended, to the throne of Egypt. God's detours are like threads in embroidery. From below, they look tangled. From above, they reveal a perfect design. Faith is the vision that trusts even without understanding the underside. So if life has taken you on roads you didn't plan, don't assume you've made a mistake. Perhaps God simply redirected you away from something that would have broken you. Wait, His timing is protection disguised as delay. And when everything finally falls into place, you'll realize it wasn't slowness, it was love moving at the pace of eternity. There are days when there's simply no strength left. The body keeps moving, but the soul lags behind. You try to pray, but the words don't come. You try to believe, but the heart is too tired to wait. And it's at that very point that grace steps in, not to demand more from you, but to carry you. When the road ends, God doesn't leave you on the ground. He lifts you in His arms and keeps walking. The promise is found in Isaiah 46:4. Even to your old age and gray hairs I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. This is the voice of a God who never abandons the weary. He doesn't just point the way. He becomes the strength beneath your feet. When your steps falter, His presence becomes the ground that holds you. Many times it's in exhaustion that we encounter the deepest love, because when human strength ends, divine strength begins. The Apostle Paul wrote, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians 12:10. That is the great reversal of the kingdom. God's power is made perfect in weakness, and fatigue becomes the doorway to dependence. Elijah also reached the end of his road. After facing the desert and his own loneliness, he asked to die under a broom tree. But God didn't rebuke him. He sent an angel with bread and water, saying, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." 1 Kings 19:7. The same God who called him to walk was the God who sustained him to continue. The grace of God doesn't just show the way, it walks with you in it. When all you can do is breathe, He turns your sigh into prayer. When your faith feels too small, He holds it until it blooms again. He doesn't ask for perfection, He offers presence. And that presence is all you need to keep going. Maybe today the path feels broken, the horizon blurred, and the will to stop stronger than the courage to continue. But remember, the one who brought you this far won't leave you now. Even if the ground gives way, His arms never fail. When you can't walk, He carries you toward the promise. The road may have ended in your eyes, but not in God's love. He keeps going, and while He carries you, He turns weight into rest and despair into trust. Because the journey was never about your strength. It has always been about His faithfulness. When plans collapse and routes disappear, one thing remains, something time cannot erase: trust. It becomes the new map when the way no longer makes sense. Trusting God doesn't mean ignoring pain. It means walking through it with faith. It's looking toward heaven and saying, "Even without understanding, I still believe." Trust doesn't remove the questions, it simply changes their tone. Instead of asking why, the heart begins to ask, what for? The Bible shows this in the story of Mary. When the angel announced the impossible, she didn't ask for details or proofs. She simply replied, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." Luke 1:38. Mary didn't have all the answers, but she knew the character of the one who had spoken. Her trust became the map that guided her through uncertainty. To trust is to choose to stay, even without knowing what comes next. It's to keep walking with a surrendered heart, believing that God is still writing, even when you can't understand the current sentence. The map of faith is not made of lines and distances, but of obedient steps. Each act of trust becomes another point on the route heaven has already drawn. Sometimes it's hard to trust when nothing seems to align, but true trust doesn't depend on outcomes. It depends on relationship. You trust not because you see, but because you know who leads. Faith is the map drawn by the hands of love, and love never loses its way. Abraham lived this when he climbed the mountain with Isaac. He didn't understand the reason, but he trusted the God who would provide. And when sacrifice seemed inevitable, God revealed the ram, Genesis 22:13-14. That's how trust works. The path reveals itself when the heart chooses to remain. Trust isn't passivity, it's movement in peace. It's the kind of faith that walks while resting, waits while advancing, and believes even when it doesn't feel. God doesn't ask for speed, He asks for surrender. He wants to be the map, not just the direction. So when everything feels uncertain, close your eyes and say, "Lord, lead me again," and He will, just as He always has. Because where trust lives, fear loses its address. And step by step, the map is drawn, not on the ground, but within you. What part of this is speaking to you right now? Share a single word in the comments. It may encourage someone else. There's a stage in the spiritual journey where the soul matures and begins to realize that not everything needs an explanation. There comes a moment when you understand that God is not a tour guide narrating every step, but a father leading you in silence, with safety. He doesn't rush to justify His decisions, because He knows that if He explained everything, faith would cease to exist. The word says in Deuteronomy 29:29, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may follow all the words of this law." What God hides is not punishment, it's protection. He veils what we're not ready to grasp and reveals only what's needed for the next step. That's not distance, it's divine wisdom. The maturity of faith is learning to walk without understanding. It's realizing that peace doesn't come from answers, but from trust. The anxious heart wants to ask, why? But the surrendered heart asks only, with whom? And when the answer is, with God, nothing else feels urgent. He doesn't need to explain the way, because He is the way. Moses experienced this in the wilderness. God didn't give him details about every stop or trial. He simply promised His presence. "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." Exodus 33:14. That's the kind of answer heaven gives to our hardest questions, not explanations, but companionship. Explanations comfort the mind, but presence comforts the soul. God knows that early understanding could make us run ahead of His timing, so He teaches us to wait. He prefers to shape the heart before opening the way. And in that quiet process, faith becomes mature, steady, and able to endure. Trust is the language of those who have already understood love. When you learn to trust God's character, you no longer need to comprehend every move, only to rest in the certainty that He never makes mistakes. The soul that trusts trades, how will it be, for let your will be done. And that exchange changes everything. So if today God hasn't explained, it doesn't mean He's forgotten you. It means He's protecting you. He knows what each curve hides and what your heart isn't ready to see. Wait in Him. One day, when you look back, you'll realize that the silence was the space where His faithfulness was being written. There are paths that only make sense when they end. Along the way, everything feels fragmented. Losses, detours, silences, waiting. The heart tries to piece it all together, but logic can't make it fit. And then one day the soul realizes that God never promised instant understanding. He promised arrival. The road you don't understand is the same one that in the end leads you home to the center of His will. Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14:6. He is not just the destination, He is the entire road. Every difficult turn, every dark valley, every sunrise of hope carries a trace of His love. And when the journey feels too long, it's His love that becomes both compass and refuge. Everything you've lived, even the pain, was under the gaze of the one who never loses control. Your tears weren't detours, they were seeds. The pauses weren't delays, they were intervals of grace. Every chapter of the path, even the quiet ones, was written by hands that already knew the ending. God never wastes roads, He redeems them. The disciples on the road to Emmaus didn't understand the path either. They walked sad and confused, believing it was all over, until Jesus came near and began to walk with them, Luke 24:15-16. They only recognized him when he broke the bread. It's the same with us. We often recognize his presence only when we look back and realize he was there all along. Maybe you're still in the middle of the curve, unsure of the reason behind your pain. But God's road is made of invisible purposes. He turns valleys into bridges, losses into passageways, detours into direction. And when the day finally dawns inside the soul, everything that once seemed confusing begins to make sense. Home is not a place. It's a presence. It's the moment when the soul finally rests, realizing it never walked alone. Every step brought you closer to grace, and every waiting moment was a reminder. Love has always known the way back. Sometimes what you hear at the end of the road is the echo of your own footsteps, reminding you that even when you didn't notice, there was always companionship. God wasn't just beside you, he was within you, sustaining every quiet decision that led you here. The sound of your walk, once mistaken for loneliness, was the rhythm of grace leading you in time with eternity. No pain was wasted. Every loss taught you how to love without guarantees. Every waiting season taught you how to trust without proof. That's how heaven shapes the soul, by turning the weight of doubt into the lightness of faith. What once wounded you now refines you. What once hurt now forms you into someone capable of deeper love. And when your heart finally understands that everything led you back to his presence, you realize that home was never about geography. It was about rediscovering the purpose you were created for. Faith stops being an effort and becomes rest. The road stops being a challenge and becomes an altar. It's the moment when walking turns into worship. The home God promised isn't just the distant heaven, it's his presence beginning here, right now, in the quiet moment you learn to rest in him. It's eternity breaking into the present, turning the end of the road into the beginning of forever. The journey never really ends. It simply changes horizons. So if today you still don't understand, don't lose heart. Keep walking. The same God who brought you this far will carry you to the end. And when you arrive, you'll see that every curve, every silence, every dark night, all of it was part of the road that led you home. Because grace has always known the way, and love never loses its way. Maybe now, as you hear these words, your heart still carries questions, and that's okay. God has never condemned those who question. He only invites those who keep seeking, even without understanding. Faith is not the absence of doubt, it's the movement of one who chooses to keep going despite it. That's what keeps you breathing through uncertainty, the quiet assurance that he is still there, even when you can't feel him. The journey of faith is rarely linear. It's more like a river winding between valleys, curves and stones, yet it always finds its way to the sea. That's the path of those who trust in God. They don't follow shortcuts, they follow the flow of his presence. Every pause, every curve, every delay hides a purpose, and in the right time, everything aligns. Take a moment to look back. See how far God has brought you. Remember the times when fear said, "It's over," but grace whispered, "Not yet." You crossed valleys that felt impossible, endured nights that seemed endless, and even weary you made it here. That alone proves something greater. You were never walking alone. Love guided you when the map failed, carried you when strength ran out, and upheld you when the ground disappeared. God has never lost sight of you, not for a single second. He has known every tear, heard every wordless prayer, and seen every hesitant step. And even when the silence felt heavy, he was working behind the scenes of time, weaving the thread of providence with invisible hands. Faith is learning to trust that weaving. So if tomorrow still looks cloudy, don't fight it, just surrender. Say quietly, "Lord, I give you the map, and I choose to follow your presence. That is the prayer of the mature, not of those who know where they're going, but of those who know with whom they go. That's how the heart finds rest, not when it understands the road, but when it recognizes the guide. Now take a small symbolic action. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine Jesus walking ahead of you, on the same path that once frightened you. See the soft light surrounding him, the golden dust of dawn rising slowly, and realize you are safe. His love is the road, the ground, the home. And as you walk, he keeps leading, one quiet step at a time, toward the destination heaven itself has chosen. One day, you'll look back and see that the most confusing parts were the ones that shaped you the most, that the waiting taught you to listen, and the detours led you to the right place, that what once felt like an ending was actually the beginning of a reunion. Because on every road of life, grace has always known the way home. If this reflection brought you peace, you are welcome to walk with us, one quiet video at a time. Subscribe and let these words find you again when you need them most.